Welcome back to Carlie's Couch 2020.
The boat.
Still here, still standing.
Praise the Lord.
We hope everybody had a good New Year's. We're back. We got some more heat for you. We got more topics for you. And December was Get Your Shit Together December. So how are we coming in for January, Carlie?
We coming in hot. We coming in bold this year. So we're starting out 2020 with boldness, being bold. Out towards the end of the year, when we were talking about things that were leaving behind and thinking about our periods of reflection, just in self-awareness and all the growth and everything that we were doing last year, which y'all were here for all of it. And if you weren't, you should go back and listen to those episodes because they're fire. I realized that I wasn't being bold enough. And what kind of brought that on for me was a discussion actually we had on the podcast when you asked me what I wanted to do. And I told you, and you were like, you're already doing that. And I was like, taken aback. And I kind of pondered on it and realized that, I am already doing all these things that, I say that I'm doing and that I'm working on. Like, why am I not dreaming bigger and taking bigger actions for myself? Like, if I'm doing the work, like, what's keeping me from leveling up to that next level? And I realized that it's just myself and my mindset. And so that's why I was like, man, I want to talk about being bold and like changing that mindset and what that can look like in different areas.
And so with that, you're choosing boldness as almost an intention for how you're kind of moving right now.
It is. So, your remark sparked the thought of like, well, man, why am I not doing these things? And then we had a Friendsgiving.
Not why are you not doing them, but why do you keep acting like you're not doing them?
Exactly. Why am I downplaying like what I'm doing and diminishing things and not expanding? And at the Friendsgiving, they're like, well, what are your themes for next year? And I usually pick a word or a couple words that are like my themes. So aside from my personal philosophy, these are my intentions. That's in alignment with my personal philosophy. And I was like, I want to be bolder in how, in my faith, I want to be bolder in the things that I ask for and the things that I apply for and just how I look at everything, just bold action. So taking bold actions in everything.
Okay. So then once you made that decision, did you like write down or decide like what categories and in what spaces you want to be more bold?
I want to be bold in every space. And in every category. But to what you're saying is I did think of a couple areas right off the top of my head and journal about those, like career for sure. Like, why do I not have a sales team? Why am I not applying to this conference or doing different things? So definitely career and life things. The personal areas, I feel like I'm pretty bold personally and take a bunch of leaps that way. But in the vision for my company and things, I realize I've been playing a little small.
Mm-hmm. But my question to you now, though, is what makes you think that it's the boldness that's missing? Because a couple of things you just said was like having a sales team or applying to maybe speaking or more opportunities for your work. Mm-hmm. But what's the difference in just, hey, you just may not have been at that place versus you think boldness is just what you need to put in order to be that?
I think it's a combination of both. I think part of it is not having those things in place or not being ready, for a sales team. Like if I don't know what I'm doing, how can I have a sales team? Mm-hmm. But I think part of it is also realizing that I might have a limiting mindset in certain things. And that might be why I didn't send in a proposal when I said I would, or when I talked to somebody that I'm like, man, this will be a great person to connect with and to go for this job. And then I just didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like I had a similar spark on this idea of being more bold. But for me, it was when we were interviewing Dominic. If you haven't listened to that episode, it was our last guest episode of last year. And, the way he was talking about how he makes connections for himself and reaching out to people. And I really just was like, man, I just don't do that. I haven't been doing that. And it comes from the same about first, not really being in the right space to be excited about an idea or a thing you're doing if it's not tight to you yet. Because otherwise it's like, what are you talking about? But yeah, that kind of makes me realize like, well, where am I with that? Is what's missing like something more fundamental, or is it just the fact that I just haven't thought to do that, or I just have not spoken up for myself more in like certain positions where I could have. So since then too, I have been thinking more about boldness and applying that for me. I think looks like just taking more ownership of the things that I'm doing and really not necessarily talking about them more, but being more confident in the projection of like how I want to work with you or what I want to do with this person or that person, and just putting things out there a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And like even reaching out to y'all really have to listen to Damo's episode. It was great. But, reaching out to people who inspire me or who might be a couple of steps ahead of me that can help me get to where I want to be or that I can learn from, like not even an ask from them, but also learning to ask for help. And I think that's another area that what boldness looks like for me is everybody's like, oh, like, let me know when I can help you or what do you need help with? And I'm always like, I don't know. I got you. I'll let you know. And then now I'm finally like, oh, let me actually ask.
And we're saying a lot of things now about like being bold with them. So what does it really mean to be bold? What does that mean?
To walk with confidence, knowing that everything's going to work out. Exactly.
I think it's more than but I think it's confidence. I think it's confidence with the actions more.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. I guess they both have to go together, like the confidence and action. But I think it's because you're saying it could be with anything. It could be being more bold with like personal or relationships, work, all of those things. But being more bold is acting more, knowing that like you got this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a walking
like letting
part.
go of that old story, because we talked about that in some episodes last year too. How it's kind of like that limitedness is like just this story that we've been living, and it's like, but we don't have to adhere to that.
Yeah, and so it's taking stock of all of the areas of your life, because there might be some that you're really bold in and some that you are pretty meek in. Not that that's a bad thing all the time, but if you're not advocating for yourself and honoring yourself in the ways then you need to be. And even expansion. So expanding yourself and challenging yourself to get outside of your comfort zone. Like if you only talk to contacts that about expanding your business, but they don't have a business like yours. Like, I don't know how big your business can get. So it's like working on consistent expansion, and it's not just being confident, but knowing that you've done the work and then walking in it.
And how can you know when applying this boldness is your next step? Like, where were you?
I just have been doing the work. Like, I realize that now I'm in a place where I can, go for some of these bigger contracts, or where I can actually apply to speak at these conferences, because I've been doing so much work in these areas. It's like, well, why haven't I done this? What have I been doing with my time? And making sure it's in alignment is always my first thing. But the next one is like, I've been doing the work. Like, why am I not pushing myself to go further and actually leveling up to the next level? It's like I hit a peak. I guess I hit a peak to answer your question. I guess I hit a peak where I was like, oh, I kind of feel comfortable. Like, I'm not really growing. I'm not challenging myself.
So I think that could be a good thing to think about if you're in a place where you feel very comfortable, or if you're in a place where I think if you feel like you're really, really busy, but you feel like you're at a ceiling, usually, because there's always a way to scale things or to not feel as stressed while you're being successful, air quote, successful, or, like getting things done. But I think a lot of times it's that we're not being bold, because really being bold might be take a step back and like do some hard things that you really need to do to make sure you're scalable. Or it may be bold steps. Like for me, like bold steps is to make moves before that money comes in, or like, or knowing things are coming in the future. And it's like, all right, at what point am I going to stop nudging up from like 10 to 20 and trying to do all these little steps to get to the next little notch, instead of thinking about, well, what things need to be in place for like 100 or for 1,000, and getting those things together so you can actually scale to that. Like, thinking 10 to 20 is cool, and that's still thinking forward, but to think 10 to 100, I think gives you more space to think bigger and think from more of a bird's eye view to really understand what that layout needs to be, instead of that constant scramble, 10, 20, 30, 40 going up. I feel like it's a lot more of a scramble. And so being more bold is really just assessing, like, if you're not comfortable, or if you are too comfortable, which I guess then you must have to get uncomfortable to want to take bold steps. But that's when it's like, all right, what do I actually really need to do? And like really making that intention to do it.
It is. And I think a huge part of this also, like before you take these leaps of faith, before you take these big, bold actions, is like, so making sure your foundations are there, but also making sure you're clear on what it is that you're doing. I think that, being in a haze and I could do this, but I kind of want to do this, but I don't know this. Like that also, like I was kind of in limbo. So right after I graduated, I couldn't start sending out huge proposals and going after partnerships with my company if I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like that doesn't make any sense. And so I feel like now that I have that part of my foundation solid, it makes it a lot easier to understand who I need to connect with or what questions I need to ask or what help I need.
But I have a question about that because are we saying that you can't take bold steps until you're clear? And what might it look like if you feel unclear? What might bold steps look like in that case?
No, I think you can definitely take bold steps regardless if you're super clear. I was like in business that kept me from taking what I deem as bold steps.
Yeah, and that is a takeaway from that because what you said made total sense. But just kind of thinking about it from that space, like, I don't think it has to be like, well, get clear and then now you know what to do.
I think it's whenever, like you, for example, like let's say you're at a job that you're like, I can't do this shit anymore. Like I'm going to go crazy. And a bold step for you might be quitting your job after you've applied for a couple more and you might not have that yet. I mean, granted, you probably have some money in the bank to sustain yourself.
Or a bold step might be at your job proposing like to start a new thing or because you've talked about things like that before. And it may just be, that's a bold step. It's just wherever you are, like you kind of make an intention of a direction you want to go and then being just bold about, well, I'm going to do this thing. From there, you see like working, yes, no, forward, backward, whatever do I need to do? But that bold step at least shows you experience and shows you what you need to be moving more towards or away from.
I think the important part is you're moving, right? If you ever feel stuck, like you have to take a step somewhere so that life or like the GPS will start directing your steps as you go. For example, like if you're working at a job that you kind of like, but you really want to do music or videography, but you start taking a class on the weekends. Like that's a bold step working towards your dreams, but you don't know that is the thing that you want to do or how it can look or how it can change and grow until you start moving. And so I would say that's probably another huge indicator that you need to take a different type of step is if you feel stuck.
And then with some of the things that you said you want to act more boldly towards, have you been applying anything already or have you seen any progress in this space?
I have. So, it all started, I was reading the Prayer of Jabez, like devotional, and it's all about faith and like asking God to bless you because Jabez literally was like, enlarge my territory. And so it's, thinking about ways that will help, further your purpose and further all of the good work and the things you're doing for the community. And so since I started reading that and started being more intentional about being bold, I've finished an entire curriculum, which it took me almost a year and a half to do my very first one. This took me a weekend. I finished an entire curriculum. I followed up with 2 people in my same industry-esque, because it's a little different, and had coffee dates and asked them, how'd you get there? Like, what'd you learn? Do you have any advice? All of those things, following up with people. Submitted a couple of proposals. Like, I've been doing very much work ever since I made the decision to be more bold.
And then how do we know it's not just like a jolt, of just like, oh, wow, this feels good? Or like, how do you make that a habit? Or is it hard? Or is it just now it's just a natural thing to you?
I think it's harder in my head than it is to actually do it. Like most things we build it up like, oh, I can't send that proposal because I'm not ready and it's not perfect. But I think the commitment makes that so much easier. So like, no, you're doing bold things. So you're going to send that proposal even if you think it's 95% ready instead of 100. Like you did the work, you're doing this, you're going to send it. Like I'm constantly challenging myself. And so I think that commitment to myself has made it easier. But I do think the process is still scary. You're being vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there for rejection in anything. Like even if I'm asking for more help in relationships or if I'm reaching back out to those friends who said they'd help me with my business, they can always say no. But at least now that I asked, and like that's the part that feels really good is I'm honoring what I said I would do for myself.
And do you feel like all of it is expansion as far as relationships with other people and asking, or is it a lot of times like you already have the tools and it's just you actually doing the thing,
I think it's more of the latter. I think I've always had the tools. I've always had the people. It's just making the decision to use them differently. Like if you have a hammer and you always using the bottom to hammer nails, it's your decision to flip it up and use the right side kind of type of thing.
And if it can narrow down even more for you, do you feel like you're applying boldness to doing what? Like not procrastinating? Like, is there a way to blanket it all? And if you don't have anything, I guess the reason why I kind of asked too, because I was thinking, well, what is for me, like I'm really being more bold about, and instead of it being able to say like a list of things that I want to do, for me, I think I want to be more bold about, or like stepping out of like the overthinking, like just being more bold to stop myself. Like cause I'm always aware of it now, which is even more annoying, but like, I'm just like, and overthinking as in, about that thing to do, like the proposal you're writing or, whatever it is, right? We're saying be bold to take the action. And for me, sometimes it's more of, and it's all kind of the same, but for me, I have to think about it in the way of being bold to snap out of like lingering kind of, and just like starting the thing that I probably need to start. And a lot of times that's, what's her name? Mel Robbins has like the 5-second rule. And it's like when you catch yourself, if you just like, all right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and you have to start doing something or doing whatever, or, like if your alarm goes off and you're kind of like, I'm gonna sleep a little bit. But as soon as if you're aware, right? Like it's happened to me today. And I'm like, I can't, like, I'm like, I'm aware of it. Like I know I was supposed to get up. So I'm like, all right, you got 5, 4, 3, 2, and you have to like do something.
Ass up.
Yeah. So like, for me, I think the boldness, I can think of it without overthinking a list, because that's my issue too, right? I'll plan like, how am I really going to apply this? And what am I going to do? And instead of doing all that, it's like, what's the thing? Like for me, it's jumping out of inaction or jumping out of my thoughts in my head.
I love that. I love that. I think all of those things also apply to me, is like getting out of my head. But I think the way I could synthesize it down is to take the limits off of myself and off my mind and of what's possible for me. Because so often life and society, well, your business isn't around long enough. Nobody's ever done that before. Just the way you're raised, the mentality of lack. It's all of these limits that we constantly place on ourselves, or I'm not ready. I can't do that. Well, are you ever going to be ready unless you get yourself ready? So get yourself ready.
Do you feel like you find yourself arguing for your limitations more often?
What do you mean?
Like, do you find yourself being the one to say like, oh man, here's this conference, I could speak at that, and then you start saying why you can't do it?
Yeah, it's like that little evil voice in my head. Sometimes like I just recently saw a conference, a Filipino American conference, which y'all know I'm on my journey figuring out who I am, you know what I'm saying, identity wise. And it was about the complexity of Filipino identities. And it says like, we are all Filipinos. And I was like, I can't apply to that. Like and I was like, wait, like, and yes, in my head, it was like, hold on, bitch, like you're Filipino. Like, why could you not apply to that? And it's about your identity saying that we are all this and it can be all of these things. So why would you not apply for that?
That's a real good example.
Right. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it's catching yourself and realizing why that's a thing. And I'm like, oh, well, I've been struggling trying to find my identity for so long that I haven't ever felt validated enough or strong enough in something to do it. But instead, it's just like, just submit the proposal. Like it'll everything comes out in the wash. Like if it's meant to be, it'll work out. If not, you'll be so proud of yourself for taking those steps and honoring yourself. So for me, boldness, what I mean when I say that, it's really taking the limits off, like no ceilings, taking off those things that keep you from doing what you want to do, doing what you're excited about, or doing what you feel like you're really good at because you have all these excuses as to why you can't.
Yeah, stop talking yourself out of it. So that's really good. So that really does go into the just changing your limiting beliefs. So now that you've recognized them, it's like, what are we going to do different? And catching that. Exactly.
It's like, how can we do things differently?
That's pretty cool. And it makes me kind of think of what things, as I go through the day, could I catch? Because I was listening to something the other day about limiting beliefs and like the stories that you leave behind, right? It's like you only have fear because you know what you're losing, but you don't have any idea what you're going to gain.
Yeah.
And so that's all you can identify with, which is why we hold on to that story so much. Because now if you go to this conference, it's like, well, what am I? Like now you have to deal with that and you have to figure that stuff out. But moving forward, we have to be excited about that. We have to be excited about what can be on the other side of taking those actions and what can be on the other side of being more bold, because that limitation isn't really real. There are limitations around your time and your money and all of that, but really like there might not, you know what I mean? Like that sounds real matrixy or whatever. But like,
it is.
You have those limitations, but you might not, because there's so many stories about the people who just submitted something or just did something and they couldn't cover it. But then, this happened and something got covered and this happened over here that allowed you to, partner up with this brand, or, you know what I mean? Like not worrying about the how so much, but making sure you're moving in that direction without necessarily having to know what has to be put in place for this to work.
Exactly. It's like you run through walls when you don't know that they're there, but like our trauma and all these lessons in our life have all these walls, and you don't want to be the thing limiting yourself. There's so many things outside that try to, block you in and put you in this box or limit you and do all of this. Like, you don't want to be that person. There's every success story ever is because some person took a step. It might have been small to them. It might have been bold. It might have been whatever, but them taking steps is what got them to where they are. But in order to take steps, you have to let go of those things behind you. And it is a little matrixy, but you never know what forward movement is going to lead to. You just have to move.
Yeah, I can't really exactly think of things that I taught myself out of, though, in that area of like work type stuff. I know my friends make fun of me. I probably do it, though, but only around my friends. Like, I'll talk about things like food a lot, where I'll be like, man, I should go make this. Nah, I shouldn't do that. Well, I could do this. And like, I'll do that whole thing for like 2 minutes, and they're like, why are you arguing with yourself? Just like do whatever you're trying to do. But that probably makes me think that maybe I do it, but I can't think of any instances where I'm like straight up like, I can't speak of this or I can't do that. Like, I don't want to say never, but I feel like I don't really say that. Not outright. Mine are probably like deeper things up in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of times it's not even because I doubt myself, because I mean, I'm pretty confident in myself, but it's like a lot of things that I've been told that you don't think is a big deal until things like this happen and you realize that you start second guessing yourself. Like, man, I'm gonna apply for this job. Man, I can't apply for this job. I don't have enough experience. I don't have this. I don't have that. You go down this whole thing like, what would happen if you applied for it and you don't get it? Okay.
Right. Just having more output anyway. Like,
yeah. And I think
sometimes a lot of this stuff is a numbers game, and instead of just putting things out there, we just kind of sit there and where you're guaranteed to not move like forward at all.
Exactly. Or people will also do this, and I've had this conversation with one of my mentors. They'll be like, well, if I get this job, then I'll have to move to New York, but I have to do this. And then they start getting in limbo, and they haven't even applied for this job yet that they're starting to debate themselves over. So make sure you're also not doing that, because it's a tool of procrastination too.
Yep, I sure can. But then thinking back about your life too, because a lot of people can look at you and say, well, you're already doing this and that and that. Like, why is taking bold steps a new thing to you? And would you say that it's new? First of all, yes or no?
No.
So if it's not new, why is being bold your thing this year?
It's funny because I never thought I was being bold like in my life, which is, if I look back, because as we were talking about the episode, and she was like, I mean, but would you not say that you're bold anyways? And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, yo, like, after my freshman year of college, I took an internship. I was in Oklahoma. I took an internship in Dallas, and I didn't have a car yet. And I was supposed to be living in Dallas, and I was 19. And I took an internship the week before my internship started. I bought a cash car from a lot that was a stick. I didn't know how to drive a stick. And then ended up driving down there, living by myself. I had a futon and an air mattress and like one coffee table. But it's like, that was a quote unquote bold step. But I didn't think of it as bold. I thought of it as a great opportunity and doing something that would further me and help me grow. And then when I was unhappy, with my being an engineer, and I knew there was something more for myself, like, I applied to business school in Barcelona and got accepted. And it was like one of the top schools in the world at the time. And I would have been the youngest person in the class. And I didn't think that was bold. I thought that was me just growing and doing things that I wanted to do. This year, the reason why I think it's bold is I am intentionally walking into boldness, like stopping all of those limiting thoughts, all of those negative things, and just doing what I want to do. Because I realized, I guess, as I've gotten older, and also in this struggle of being an entrepreneur, realizing like, oh man, I don't have money for that right now, or all of these things, I've started talking myself out of stuff more. And I don't want to be like that. Like, my whole life it like beats statistics and doesn't make sense. So why would I not continue to do that as I get older and better?
So it's like you're being more aware of it now.
Yeah, much more aware. But I look at everything I've ever done, and it's always been quote unquote bold stuff.
So make sure you think about that too with your own life. Like, look, I was tripping. I thought the thing was messed up. But make sure you're paying attention to your own life to recognize and understand where you have already been bold, and not just to say like, oh yeah, I have been bold, but to remember how that felt. Remember how it felt to do what you wanted to do. Remember how it felt when, you didn't know if that thing was going to work out or not, but you still did it. I said it before a few episodes ago, like the biggest jumps that I made, I didn't really think much about. And some of those things moved forward. Some of them didn't really. They were random things. But in the same way, like I went to school in a different country and I had $100 in my pocket. Like I didn't even know what was going on. And I was staying with people who lived there. And I've took the train with my last, like I had like 10 cents left. I didn't know how I was going to get back. And I took the train to go take the foreign service exam, which I ended up passing. But then I didn't take the bold step of doing the second part that I had to come back and do. So there are times I can look back and see where I've been very bold, and then certain times where it's like, well, for me personally, it's always been at a certain ceiling. It's like, well, why do I always get to a certain space? And that's where I fizzle. And I learned personally that it's, I just want to say I did something sometimes. A lot of times I just like, hey, I started this. Hey, I could have did that, right? But I don't know, maybe I didn't necessarily want to, or maybe at the time it's just like, oh, okay, cool. But I think I just wanted to say I could do it. But some kind of fear was keeping me from really going all the way, like really thinking I could really do it. And so it's like I just got enough to convince myself, like, okay, this is cool, I could do that. Or let me dabble a little bit in this thing or in this area, because I'm one of those people, I like just try to do everything, and it's just too much, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But it's just too much sometimes. And so it's kind of understanding, well, bitch, like which thing do you really want? Like, do you really like with my business, right? And as I get older, since you mentioned getting older, I think what's changed for me, because we've always taken bold moves, is that now it's like I have to actually take care of myself for real. Like it's like adulting hits you for real. Like, okay, if I want to really make something that can be sustainable. Otherwise, at some point, if I'm not growing my business, like it's just kind of a thing to do until I physically can't do stuff anymore. Which who knows when that could be, right? And so for more stability, security, things like that, it's like, all right, you need to make a real decision about what you want to do with this thing. And then from there, I got to focus on that, right? So being bold in this space to go beyond I know I can do it, but actually going beyond to really do it and follow through and grow things to the point where you really can be successful. Like, you have the means to do it, and then you really just need to.
I love that. And follow through was my other intention for this year, is making sure I'm following through on all those things. And if you do stuff just to do it, because I also do that. I like to also do everything, which we'll talk about. But realizing what that fear is it fear of rejection? Is it fear of not being good enough? Is it fear of mismanagement of whatever success you'll have? Or, are you scared of success or what failure or whatever those things are? And thinking about how you can be bold. Yeah, it's just a different space. I just realized
that, though. Like, even telling that story, I just realized, like, I didn't go for the second part of that because I really just didn't think. I was like, I'm not good. It was an oral. The next, you had to go back and do, like, an oral thing and, like, present about economics or, like, international stuff or whatever. And I was like, I don't think I could do that. And so I just didn't really want to do it. But I could have done it. But I just was like, I'm not going to do that. This was good. I was good here type of thing.
What country was it? If you want to share.
Huh?
You said what school? Like what country or where?
For what?
What you were just talking about.
Oh, taking the foreign service exam.
Oh, yeah.
So the foreign service exam is to work for the government in the capacity of whether you want to do ambassador work or represent the country in other countries. So it wasn't about a specific place yet.
Okay.
But you had to go through a certain amount of like programming in school, like development stuff before you get like assigned, and all these things you have to be working on and learn. So kind of like going to the military or something, where it's not that, but you have to pass all this stuff. So only a few people even get into it, but then there's like a lot of training and stuff you got to do. And I think I just got to that point where I was like, I'm not going to do the rest of this.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
After I did all that struggle to pass the first part.
It'd be like that.
I know. Well, it don't need to be like that no more.
Exactly.
I think a lot of it is, that we're moving into territory that we're not familiar with. And so it's like you get to the point where we've been doing all this work and, in our minds and with our beliefs, to where it's almost too uncomfortable now to like not do something different. And you're just going to kind of lose your mind more the more you're like not doing stuff. It's just like you're getting more and more uncomfortable. And so I think this boldness is about really feeling that uncomfortableness and like doing what you need to do, because you feel way better when you just start making moves, start getting stuff out there, because with more of those no's starts coming bigger yeses and better yeses.
Yes.
In ways that you'll be able to grow and enjoy. Like sometimes it's like you don't really enjoy what you're doing, or you may feel like that because it's just so scrambly. But if you make bigger moves, you might enjoy this better. If it's like Carly Carpio, biggest gym in the world, or biggest like whatever, like you know what I mean. Like if whatever you're doing is big and it's helping people, and if you're really excited about that, if you really believe that, then like why not? Like why not do this thing?
Exactly. And so I want to know what areas y'all are working on, where you can be more bold. Like, why not? Like, look through those different, like, career and relationships and friendships and, I mean, school, everything, like, even hobbies and stuff. Like, why not? Like, thinking through where you can stretch yourself and expand and grow. And then add us at Lextopia, at CC Fierce, Carlie's Couch on Instagram.
And then this week, we have a question of the week.
Which is, what is something you want to be? And then I was like, nah, what is something you will be celebrating this time next year? Not that you want to, because we're changing our language, but something that you will be.
21 for this.
21.
I'll say, okay, so what I'll be celebrating this time next year is the movement from working with contractors to full-time employees. How about that?
Ooh, I like that. And that's a requirement now in the state of California. For a lot of like places, gym, salon. So make sure that y'all are in line with that. Don't want anybody to get in trouble. Something I will be celebrating this time next year. So this time, early January 2021. Oh, wow. Because it'll be so close to my birthday still, my birthday celebrations will be rolling over, literally. And then also 2 other things. So one is be celebrating another year at the Bouch, not me. And then also for me, I will have published a book.
All right.
So y'all hold me accountable.
21, look for that book.
Yep. Let's see what is something that y'all will be celebrating this time next year.
And think about what bold steps you'll take.
Let us know.
To get there.
Have a beautiful day.